We continue our reading of Lest We Forget, a daily devotional by author George R. Knight. Today's reading, June 21, Adventism in the Time of War, Part 4. Peter and the other apostle replied, "We must obey God rather than men." Acts 5:29. Such were the words and the conclusions of the apostles when they came face to face with a conflict in commands between God and earthly government. But what the implications of that truth were for Adventists in the face of military service was not all that clear to church members in 1862. James White's invitation to submit articles on the topic of the proper position of the church on military service brought in not only a high volume of responses, but also a complete range across the spectrum of possible options. On one end were the total pacifists who believed that Christians should avoid military service altogether. It was probably such an orientation of members in Iowa whose aggressive pacifist agitation had triggered charges that Adventism was not patriotic that brought about the publication of White's initial thoughts on the topic. At the other end were the crusaders for full participation in the war, such as Joseph Clark. "I have," he wrote, "been very anxious to know duty respecting the war, not so much for fear of the draft as because I want to see treason receive its just deserts. Consequently, I have written to Brother White to know if it would be allowable for us to go into the ranks. I've had my fancy full of Gideons, Jephthahs, and fighting Davids. I have wished sometimes that I had it where Joab and Absalom, and almost fancied that the time might come when a regiment of Sabbath keepers would strike this rebellion a staggering blow, in the strength of him who always helped his valiant people when they kept his statutes. Last winter I had the war fever so high that it injured me somewhat." In another article Clark wrote, "Was there not war in heaven? Is it murder to hang or shoot a traitor? No, no. Were Joshua and David murderers? Let us lay aside fanaticism and act like men." So the debate went, until, at long last, White called for an end to it as far as review articles went, since someone had adequately represented every perspective. The whole debate indicates a refreshing openness in early Adventism, one that over time would help them move toward a consensus on controverted issues. This concludes our reading today of Lest We Forget.